We are live.
I'd like to call the meeting to order. If everyone could stand for the flag salute. Pledge allegiance
To the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. You get a motion to approve the meeting agenda?
Motion.
Lori, motion. Randy, second? Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? All right. Pearl, are there any blue cards? Okay, without any blue cards, we'll dispense with the community open forum and move on to special presentations to the board. Tom, did you want to introduce? Aaron? Aaron.
Or Aaron Phillips. Yep, we'll have Aaron Phillips come up, and she's going to be giving a presentation on UPK.
It's not okay. None of it is okay. All right, so I wanted to update you all on our investigation into full-day UPK. So, okay. So this is a little bit of the order in which I'm going to go over things. So the investigation process, what that entailed, who was involved, the results of the surveys that went out, information on the grant that I have to follow, the cost analysis, and then what I'm looking for next steps. Because we've discussed UPK a lot, and we know that that is our foundation. So the more kids that we can get in, but we also know that Tom and I are on the same page that we don't want to offer something that reduces the number of students that we could expose to UPK in some fashion. So this is the process that I went through. So Carrie Wallivan is one of our people that we reach out to for assistance at City BOCES, and she kind of oversees the UPK program countywide. So with that, she helped me construct a survey that went out to the other component districts to, I don't want to recreate the wheel when looking into UPK. What were some things that, obstacles that they ran into, things that if they could do it again, what would they do differently, what their UPK full day program looks like, and things like that. So all the 9 component districts responded, which was great, and it gave me some ideas of if we were able to run it for next school year, where would we go and how would we roll it out and what parts would we have. So that went out, everybody participated. I also created a survey that went out to our parents, and one of the ways we tried to get as many responses as possible when you put a survey out. So we thought that during parent-teacher conferences, all the kids in the elementary schools are met on. Teachers meet with all those students in November. So each teacher had a Chromebook. Ted and his crew were great in helping me get that set up. So there was a Chromebook outside of every teacher's door at the elementary levels from Wednesday night through Friday afternoon when parent-teacher conferences took place. And then we also put it on Facebook because we know that not all our families are in school. They're still, if it's their first child, they're still out there. So, and Facebook is one of the venues that gets a lot of leeway, or headway kind of with Dave's using it for advertising and things like that and getting responses. So I also met with the department heads because with creating a new program, there's going to be a cost. So met with each department head for approximate costs to what the program for the different departments would entail. I have a person at Office of Early Learning that is my conduit to the state, and she walked me through some of the questions that I had on the legalities of the program and the funding, and then I collected all of that and presented it to Tom and Maureen. These were the survey results. Out of all the people that attended parent-teacher conferences, 84 of them took the survey. Of those 84 parents, 46% of them would still send their child to half-day UPK even if they had a full day, even if we had a full-day program. And I read through every single one of the responses as to why. Like, what are parents thinking? What is their justification for that? And then 61, and we put the Facebook one out twice. I had Brandon repopulate it, and 61 parents took that, and 39 said that they would still have it, have half-day, even if we had full day. Their rationale, their reasoning is that they feel that the half-day program is working. Their older children went through the half-day program, and it worked fine. It was a good transition for them. Full day is too long for kids who are 3, sometimes 4. They want their kids with them a little bit of time and to still get some exposure. So our parents are saying that they still want half-day. Not all of them, but some of them. So our grant information. So we took that information, then we took the grant information. So my grant, and I know last year, I forget who put it out, I think it was John Mannion, I think, put out something, a piece of news that said that the UPK money increased. So we went back and forth, I'm like, can you explain this? And it really didn't increase. That is what the state gives me, $980,057 for UPK, full day, or for UPK in general. In that money, that entails both half-day and full day. So we could run half-day sections and full-day sections, but that's the money that I have from the state. That is it. There's not a penny more. That's it. With that, with our UPK grant, these are the things that I have to consider. I can only have 120.5 full-time students. You can't have a half a child, so that means that every class can only have 18 students. So we would have to have a class or two that had 17, 16 maybe. So I have to have a teaching assistant in each classroom. For those of you who were on the board a few years ago, we had a few kids that were in our waiting pool. So we decided to add them to a class. So if you go over 18 students, you have to have another teaching assistant. So we hired a teaching assistant, and then kids left the program. So we didn't let that teaching assistant go. We utilized them in some other capacity. So since then, we said, no, we're gonna just stick with 18. So our current program, we have 108 students that are serviced under the UPK grant. We're allowed to have a little bit of overage, but I can't go over 30% of that overage or else I lose funding. So I can only have 99 half-day students, but I can convert some of those full-time slots to half-time slots, but only a few. So that's how we get because again, we want classes with 18. We don't want 17 or 16 in the class. So those are the stipulations that I have to follow when putting together the UPK program. But we can both have both half-day and full day, and the amount of that 980, so I'm going to show you what I currently have, differs depending on how many full-time students I have in the program. So there's a little funding calculator, and we played with it, and we put in how many classes of full day, or how many students a full day we could have, and then you see the totals increase. The more full day students you have, it increases the amount of money that we get. So this, in meeting with these different department heads, Paul, Amy, Dave, Maureen, Ted, all these groups, the overall cost is, you can see, that $1,806,000. Some of those costs are recurring because you've got the personnel piece, and then one are things that are one-time costs. So furniture that we would need to outfit more classrooms, because I only have 4 UPK classrooms right now. If we go to full day, think about it as those 18 kids in a morning class and those 18 kids in the afternoon class. If it was full day, that one teacher could only service 18, so I would need to take those other 18 and put them in a different class. So we'd have to outfit that with the same you want to have it the same furniture that the other classrooms have. So one-time cost objects and then the recurring cost. Food service, most of it is personnel. And then technology, there's a little bit of recurring cost. Textbook, we're still in the process of figuring out what math curriculum we're going towards next year. So that one's not finished, but that would be a one-time cost, might be reoccurring every few years, depending on materials and things like that. Transportation, because we do offer two-way transportation now for our students, so that would be a recurring cost. And then the materials, once you buy, certain things, they're there. So I put that in the one-time cost part. So those are, you can see, there's my budget. That's what I'm allowed. This is what we would kind of look at. So, so we bring that because this is a decision that the board, we will have to decide what are we going to do? And I can tell you what we've decided to do for next year. But, so these are some of the scenarios, and you can see that the numbers change. So right now, I gotta take this with me. So this is what I currently have. We've got 6 sections that are run through the grant. That is my grant money. That's the only budget that I have for our current UPK program. We have one section, it's actually 2 sections, one class that is district run. So our program out at AA Cole is our own. It's locally funded. I don't use any of the grant money. So when I buy supplies, I do not take it out of the grant. I take it out of my budget because I can't have any of the grant money going towards that program. So you can see the numbers as our full day numbers increase, my budget increases. So really the only way that I'm going to utilize all of that 980 is if we have full day. And really I can only run 7 full day, and even with the 7 full day, they wouldn't have 18 kids in all of them because that would bring us over 120.5 students. So when Tom Maureen and I were talking, this is kind of our ideal situation where we would like to get to, but knowing that we might have to slow roll it to roll it out, it might look more like one of the first scenario or the second scenario if we were to do that. Because of the planning and time and figuring out what we're doing at CSI, we have decided to hold for full day for next year, really look at the parents, because when I surveyed them, I surveyed parents that had kids coming next school year and the following school year, so 25, 26, and 26, 27. People filled out names, gave me information, so we're going to contact those parents for the kids that were in the 26, 27 cohort and get more definitive numbers as to full day versus half day. So, any questions on this?
Well, before you go to questions, just a couple things that I definitely want to make sure don't get missed. So originally we were talking with City BOCES because they were looking at potentially, leasing significant amount of classrooms at CSI that would literally pay for whatever we needed to do, which would allow us that perfect scenario, 4 full day, 2 sections of half day. But unfortunately, they came back and said that what they would use that for would require, it would be a lot of special ed programming, and they have ESY, extended school year, and it needs to be air conditioned. And so in talking with Paul Brissett, you can't use the window-mounted air-conditioned units in the classrooms throughout the summer. The load of electricity is just not there. So it's the same kind of conversation that we had about 7 or 8 years ago when City was going to do it and then pulled out when they realized it would result in a major capital project that they did not want to do. So that's why originally we were excited until they came back and said, oh, we're going to need air condition all the rooms, so that wasn't going to work. So there's some other things that we're looking at. The surveys did come back with less than half the parents wanted full day. I just think we need to do a really good job all of the rest of this year and all of next year letting parents know the benefits of having, full day UPK. Early intervention is huge, especially if a little kiddo is able to be in there, and then we could say something's a little off here. They need to be evaluated for special education services, because what we want to try to stop is when kids come into kindergarten and they've never been at any UPK, that's very difficult for those teachers to be able to kind of figure out, is there something below the surface that's more of a stumbling block for this child, meaning, the need for special ed services, or is the child just never been in any structured environment? So I've never seen a bigger gap among students than if you go to a kindergarten room, because you'll see the students that have had that structure compared to students that had no structure. Some kids are not potty trained at all. Other kids are they're tying their shoes, they're already potty trained. There's a huge gap, and unfortunately, the research shows that gap just kind of compounds as the years go by. So no one's disputing the need for early intervention. When we had a board retreat, that was like a big rock among a lot of the board members, significantly, was early intervention. Are we getting ahead of this? So we're looking at CSI and potentially 2 years from now to see what that could look like in that building. And then when I come and I talk about school-based health center that we've been working on, will potentially also be in that building. So there's a lot of things that could line up, not for next year, but for the year after.
So again, we're going to reach out to those families to get a better idea of, and sometimes those families will know people, or if people move in, so the more that we publicize it and get it out there and have information brought back, and then potentially begin to plan some full-day classrooms next year. One of the things that we did, Tom and I did talk and Maureen about, was a little bit to what Tom just said. Some of those children who come into kindergarten and haven't, they haven't been exposed to different, routine or structure or things like that, because that can be a big experience for kids. Is, if you remember back about 5 years ago, I think, we had a teaching assistant that was in one kindergarten classroom per building. And it was kind of to help with those situations. So as kids came through kindergarten screening and people could kind of see struggles following directions, they might need a little bit of extra support coming into kindergarten, they would go into that classroom. So that is one of the things that we did talk about to help with that kindergarten transition for those kids, because that was a structure and a system that worked. And then if students have a one-on-one on their IEP or a two-on-one or whatever, there would be a teaching assistant in another classroom so that you didn't overload one classroom with adults. So that is something that we are looking at doing for next year to help with that incoming kindergarten
The
classroom.
reason why we went away from it, that's when Cuomo said that he was saying that it's going to be a 20% cut, and we have 68 million. So we pulled those. And now we're looking at it and we're listening to our elementary teachers and administrators, and it is a struggle in the kindergarten rooms, and a lot of it becomes behavioral, and we think by putting those teaching assistants back in, essentially will be a massive cost avoidance, because a lot of things could be handled more structurally than all of a sudden become evaluations and a special ed need that's really not a special ed need.
And one of the, the personnel part to it is a big piece, because we're really looking at, when you have all of these littles in there, 3 and 4 year olds, 100 and potentially 120.5 children in a building, that's a lot of students that will have, we have talked about it, the behavioral concerns and needs of the kids. So really having a social worker down there to be a person that is, one, helps with the families and the needs that would be there because of the amount of kids, but also that attendance. We've been talking about chronic absenteeism, and how can our social workers reach out to those families to make sure that our kids are coming to school and they're learning the proper, it's important to come to school and this is why, and getting there, and starts that positive trajectory when they're little, as opposed to being in elementary school. The teachers, because we would need extra teachers, teaching assistants. So we want to put it together and have it done well and be a great program to, leapfrog our kids into kindergarten. So that is why that cost is there.
And Aaron and I were talking, we want to have nights, a couple of them where parents who are going to be having kids, let's say 2 years from now, we want to really get them to come in. And I've talked to a couple of them, and very educated people, they just they want their wives to be home with the kids at that age, right? So they're like, but we need to be sold on it, right? So I want them to be able to talk. Aaron knows this stuff inside and out. I want them to understand the benefit of full-day UPK, and that where they may think it's daunting that the really little ones are going to be there full day, the benefits of that. And so by having those opportunities where parents come in and ask those questions, might be able to get more parents interested in it for 2 years from now.
There would still be a rest time.
That's what I was just gonna say.
Yes.
So obviously, I was really surprised at the amount of people that didn't want it.
I know.
I was too. So was he.
Parents, they had said, well, my kid's not gonna be on a schedule, they're missing a nap, you know, all these things. And I was like, that is not the case at all. Maybe provide some sort of a schedule that they actually would be having, so that the parents know and would be
Right.
sold.
Right. So,
I was surprised.
right. Well, even my person, I was surprised that my person from Office of Early Learning said, I work for the Office of Early Learning, and I wanted to keep my son home with me because I just wanted them with me. They're little. So I was like, oh, me, I sent my son. Like, go. So, it is very much a conversation that we continue to have. It is something that I want to have here, at least if we start small, and then parents see, oh, wow, the benefits, and, you know, my neighbor's child went through it. I was hesitant, but now I'm, sold on it. So, sometimes you got to go slow to go fast.
And one final thing, it's going to work itself out. I continue to talk to people from McNee, and the people from Onondaga County are saying that Central Square is primed to literally be the largest school district in the region in about 7 or 8 years. Hands down, with all the available land. So when that happens and we get a huge influx of our student enrollment, many of them are going to be workers for Micron. They are going to want their kids in full day UPK. So we're leading towards that. Question is, can we kind of get that up and rolling
Right.
for the parents that do want it?
And the one thing that really gets in our way is that grant allowance. I mean, when $980,000 doesn't,
As we get bigger, will it grow with us? Will that amount grow with us?
I don't know, my number hasn't changed in the years I've been doing this. So since 2016, that's been, well, the 400, and because we have half-day, so the 439 has been my amount for the last handful of years, has not changed.
But when more numbers do come, so does the tax base,
Right.
so does other things allocate to the state.
Right,
That it'll be more Syracuse that has the money.
right. So, more to come, but that's kind of just an update on what went into it, where we continue to be, and what my plan is for the future. Okay?
And now, on to a really great topic, fiscal stress. With Maureen Ladd.
All right, we're back to budget time. So much fun. So the fiscal stress monitoring system has been around now for probably like 15 years. And it used to get a lot more traction, I guess I would say, than it does now. But the scores have come out and it's been updated for this year. So I kind of like to review it a little bit just in case anybody gets any questions on it. It's basically, it's done through the comptroller's office, and that's their way of monitoring governments that have fiscal stress. So there's systems for school districts, counties, villages, everybody. They have identifying items that they look at to like forecast solvency and make sure that you're going to be able to meet your future revenue streams. It takes all the financial information that we already submit to the comptroller's office and gets a uniform set of indicators, financial and environmental. And they put out 2 scores for everybody, a financial indicator and an environmental indicator. This, for school districts, the key drivers on the fiscal stress for the financial indicators are year-end fund balances, our operating surpluses or deficits, our cash position, and our short-term cash flow debt, which we actually don't have any. A lot of schools get like revenue anticipation notes because they don't have a cash balance that supports them, but they know that your taxes will come at a certain time, your state aid will come at a certain time, so they get little short-term loans just to get them through. And so far, we've never, since I've been there, we haven't experienced that. So they tell us if we, and the environmental indicators look at other items that are more community-oriented. They have your percentage of economically disadvantaged, our class size, teacher turnover, property value changes, budget vote rates, and the ELL learners that are in the district. This is a little breakdown of how it works. Then there are 4 scores from no designation all the way to significant stress. And they take the indicators and give you a score for both your financial and your environmental. So the 24 scores that just came out a few weeks ago, we are in the category of no designation. We do have a small score in the fiscal stress, it's 6.7. And our environmental score is actually going up a little bit. I'll talk about it, but it basically is due to the lower rate of approval of the budget last year. In all, there's 669 schools that are in this comparison data that they use, and there's 48 schools that are in the Central New York region. Basically, they give us our scores and show us all schools, then the Central New York and the medium. This is the unassigned fund balance, so this is the one that's supposed to be at 4%. We're at 5.4. I think it's very interesting how many districts and schools are way above it at 8.8, and our comparative Central New York schools are at 6.5. The fund balance as a percentage of your gross expenditures, we are a little lower than all schools and lower than Central New York schools, but we do have cash flow at this point, we're fine. Operating surpluses, we had a small deficit a couple years ago, that's what triggers our fiscal score, but generally we have not operated at a deficit, and most schools don't. And we have cash investments versus our current liabilities, which is fine, 154, 1.5 times our liability. And then they put cash as a percentage of our monthly expenditures, which we're in good shape there, actually ahead of Central New York schools. So this is our stress score compared to the rest of the schools. We're right even, right in the range with everybody. There's only about, I think it's like 40 schools in total that pop any type of a score at this point. The environmental indicators, there's the comparisons to that. The economically disadvantaged are 48%, which is actually low for our county, but it's decent as far as all schools. And our student-to-teacher ratio, it's a little higher, but not much over the rest of the districts. Our turnover rate for teachers, we're actually trending in a little better. We maybe keep them a little bit more. And our change in property value, we actually do well with that because we don't have a lot of big businesses in our tax base. So, the value of our homes are going up. So we do continue to increase in our property values. We don't ever have any big thing that's like pulling out and make a big dent in the tax base. This is our budget vote approval. That's where we are a little lower this year. And our ELL, we don't even trigger a score. I don't know, we have maybe a handful of ELL needs in the district. So this is the environmental stress score. We're right in range with everybody else at the 15. So you can take this worksheet and project out and put numbers in it. So I'm projecting that we're probably going to use some fund balance over the next year or two, given that our state aid is pretty flat this year. But even projecting that, it still doesn't show that we would pop any type of an indicator. So that actually is good news as far as that process. And then they give you these indicators with the estimates going forward. So we would lose some fund balance that shows there in total gross against expenditures, but we would definitely be all right if we do use some of our fund balance, which I think we probably are going to end up doing over the next couple of years. And I just put our county, our local schools in with us, just so everybody could see what comparison to the rest of the county. There's a couple that have a higher score, and a couple that are just like us, and a couple that are a little lower. So we're right in range. Anybody have any questions on the fiscal stress score? I'll go. This is always good. All right. So the property tax cap calculation. Now that we have figures in, we're able to estimate this. Excuse me. So basically, the tax cap has been put out there, I think it's been, what, 10 years now, or a little bit more? So it limits the total levy that a school district can set. And if you go over what that levy limit is, then you need to get a majority vote. You have to have a 60% vote of your budget approval. This is an old graph, but I keep it up here because I think it's interesting to note that over here, oh, I'm going back the wrong way. Back. So the blue is the percentage of income that all schools across the state get from taxes, and the red is what they get from state aid. So most schools are more dependent on taxes than they are in state aid. We're the total opposite, mostly in central New York and definitely in upstate New York. So it actually is very limiting to more school districts than you would think. It's definitely interesting how that works. This is the calculation. There are many pieces to it. I won't go through it. You guys pay me to put it together and learn about it. But I think the one misnomer, and this is like I always want to point out, is this little calculation right here is the growth factor, and it can be the lesser of 2% or CPI. That's only one little piece of it, but everybody thinks that means that the property tax cap is 2%. And it has nothing to do with your property tax cap. That's just one little piece of an 8-piece calculation. So this is our tax levy limit put together this year. You start with this year's levy that we're on, go through all of those calculations. And our maximum allowable that we could tax next year is $34,274,931. This is a 6.86% increase in the taxes if we were to go to the cap. I'm not saying that we will or what, but it's definitely what we have available to us. What does that mean? I think we should put a little number to that as best we can. Tax rates come in 3 parts. I go over this a lot. The school district issues the levy, New York State issues the equalization rates, and the towns issue the assessed values. So it's a 3-part calculation before your bill comes in the mail and your rate is determined. So with a 6.8% increase, we're only talking about the levy, not anything else. So I wanted to go through, this is going back to 18-19 up to the proposed possibility for next year. On the left is what we're doing right now, is what the tax rate is estimated to be with the budget information that we know. The tax rates actually come out in August. At that point, the town assessments are put in there and the equalization rates are put in there. So all we have right now to put our estimate on is the change in the levy. We don't know the change in the assessments and we don't know the changes in the equalization rates. So if you go through the past performances, these have been our estimates, rate per thousand, based on what we knew when the property tax cap was being calculated. And over in August, that's what actually ends up being the tax. So all we can do right now, on that 6.86 estimate is take this year's tax rate, which is $13.51, and estimate, I put it in the calculator that we have, it would be $14.43 per thousand, so it's a 92-cent increase per thousand. So essentially, $92 per $100,000 of assessment. That's what the 6.86 means. This is just a couple of those graphs that we get out of the comparative analytics. These are the tax rates of the districts in our county. This is Central Square right here, so we are right about even with these two, and there's 2 that are less, and there's 4 that are higher. And then if you look at our tax rate, as you can see on the other graph, there, we were maintaining, if the property tax calculation is working, you should maintain as long as you levy at that cap. But as we start not levying at the cap, you're basically losing tax rate. Does that make sense? So we've been slowly going down over the last 4 years because we had 2 zeros and then we didn't go to the cap last year. So that's where we are as far as the rate going on right now. I thought this was a good quote, so I put it up here. Brian Fessler is with school boards. With today's inflation data, schools are looking at, we got 2% tax cap. That's the number we've gotten over the last 4 years. Inflation has grown by 21.21%. The tax cap, if you go 2%, 1 year was a little less, is 8.24%. So that gap is basically, we have state aid to make it up. And so it's just interesting. So they're not making that up. So that's the point of the quote. I thought it was good. Does anybody have any questions on it?
I'm sure there'll be questions, but again, I just want to throw in, so like she said, last year, the tax cap was very similar. I think it was like 6.85, and we went out at like 4.42,
Yeah, like 3, yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
And again, other superintendents are like, well, you're leaving that money on the table, and it compounds every year. And they're right, and we did go those 2 years, but the reason why we justified not raising the taxes those 2 years was we had that COVID money, and we also asked the community for one of the propositions to have the capital reserve. And we just, Maureen and I, cabinet, we didn't feel right saying, we want you to approve a place where we can put unencumbered funds, because we have the money, but yet we're gonna go out and raise taxes. So lots of districts still do that, but what's worrisome is the 2%. So 4 of the counties, including Central Square, when the governor did the runs, it was a 2% increase. Other ones, 8.9, 8.09, 11.08, 7.67, they're increased. It really hurts us with the 2% because at the same time, we recognize that parents, by and large, don't want to pay more, but they want more, right? So we have more counseling supports, and we're seeing tragedies happening in other school districts regarding mental health. So we have the social workers, we have the counselors, we have the school psychs, we have all of it. We have the reading specialists that are making great gains, coupled with all of the, like we said, the mental health and that we increased the Arise counselors in our district and whatnot. So it's a hard game to play to say, okay, what is their appetite to be able to pass the budget, knowing during my time here, we've never gone as high as what that levy is. But when the governor puts out a 2%, that's worrisome. To then have to then sit in the hours that Maureen and I are going to spend thinking, okay, what's feasible? There's less and less people coming out to vote. So that's another focused effort that we're going to be having this year with our students that are 18 that can come out to vote. Again, we have an amazing fine arts program. We have an amazing athletic program, but we're struggling with space. So we're currently working on something to be able to alleviate that for both Winter Guard, Drumline, the musicals, rehearsals, but also our sports, especially not in season. If you look at other districts, especially in Onondaga County, they're practicing an indoor turf year-round, right? So they've got an advantage, over our kids. And so we're just trying to equal that playing field. So we realize we're going to have to be creative, but we're also going to have to look at this and then put a number out there that the board feels comfortable with.
I have one more presentation. I'm going to go through the revenues, which it's called the runs. They came out, I think it was 2 weeks ago. The governor put them out. Yep, so she unveiled a $1.7 billion executive budget. It was on Tuesday, January 21st. It adds 4.8% in school aid increase, and there's at least a 2% foundation aid increase for all students. And that's what Tom was just referring to. So we are in the 2% category. So with the state aid increase of 1.7, the 4.8% overall, the foundation increase is 5.8% across the entire state. The expense-based aids are staying at their current laws, so there's not going to be any proposed changes to decrease those. But you have to remember that those numbers that are on the runs are what's being driven by the data that's in the system right now. They're not necessarily our numbers that we will get next year. And that does not include, she didn't include an extension of the earnings limit exemption, where they've had the retired teachers and administrators have been able to come back and earn past the limit. I think it's $35,000. So that looks like that's going to be ending. That's how we still have our transportation director right now. And that's how we had Connie there a couple of years ago. And it also, yeah, exactly. And it also does not have any type of realistic transition on the zero emission bus regulations. She didn't do anything with those. Another couple of points of interest that are included in there was a universal access to school meals, which is something that everybody has been really pushing for. So, and you have to remember, this is money coming from New York State to supplement the meals so that everybody has, basically is CEP, is called community eligible. It's not, but most of the money comes from the federal nutrition program. So that is something that everybody's having a little discussion on right now, whether or not there's going to be any change in that moving forward. And the distraction-free schools, essentially cell phone policies, that was also in her budget presentations. Also not in there was any funding for prior year adjustments. We still have these 4 pieces of monies sitting out there due to us. It's a little over $700,000. And it's very interesting because there's formulas running all over the place all the time as far as state aid goes. And every time we end a year, I mean, I could get something from the state saying, okay, 3 years ago, there's been a change in your number. You now owe us $25,000. Well, they take it right out of the next state aid payment. They don't take anything against what they owe us. They also send us things that say, oh, now that we've made changes, we owe you money. We'll put it in the queue. So that's where that money comes from. And right now, that's not going to come back to us next year. So these are the runs as they were published. This is the foundation aid. This is the big piece of most districts' money. We are in the category where we have a straight 2% because the formulas don't drive us anything higher. These aids right here are called expense-driven aids. They basically all are running formulas from different pieces of information, and they run all the time. So like building aid, this building aid, these 2 numbers, what's in there right now and what's proposed for next year, neither one of those are our numbers, and I can tell you right now, excuse me, because we filed 3 final cost reports for the Project 1 projects that we finished this fall. So those are in the background. Once they process and come through, the next time they pull a run, our number will include the newest and greatest. The same with these, like the public and private excess costs. These are running off a different system. It's called STACK, but it's basically about special education. So those numbers are changing all the time as the costs of the kids go up and down, and they're submitted into the state. Excuse me. So all of these numbers basically move every time they pull a run. Then these, down here, these small aids are based on pupil-driven aids. So there is a number times the number of pupils you have, that's your aid. So they're small, but they also continue to go up and down for us, depending on where we are in the system. So this, on the governor's run, was basically 2.07% increase. And those were the numbers that were pulled from the systems on that day. What I try to do is pull them forward against the adopted budget that we are in. So at least we're looking at our own budget numbers and the proposed numbers to make a little bit better decisions on what's in there. And so when you run them with our adopted budget that we're currently sitting in, it's a little higher. It's about a 3.05% increase. So that's what we're dealing with right now. The aids will change, like even right now, because see the building aid right here? I knew when I was making the budget last year that we would be driving more aid. So that number is higher, even though it's not showing as realized yet on the run, we know that it'll be there. The transportation aid was higher, the BOCES aid is generally lower, and that 5.9, I can tell you, is too high, because we're not gonna push that high. But when the BOCES, that's another system that's running over here, when BOCES puts numbers in, they put high numbers in because they're afraid that they're gonna put freezes on the expense-driven aids, and we could potentially not get our BOCES aid. So they try to keep it as high as they can to make sure that we get everything that we are entitled to.
Yeah, we always get the 1.2
So
million
everything's
back.
running. It's interesting formulas. So that's where the aid package stands. That's where the tax cap number stands. And so now we start the work.
I think the biggest thing that people in the community need to know, and I need to do just a better job, is what are they getting? So when you look, I'll put this district up against any of them. So again, we just had a previous board member that had been on the board for quite some time, was really excited to call me up and let me know that his daughter is going to be able to graduate a whole semester early. It was like $45,000 savings. So when I look at our district here, when I look at Paul V. Moore High School, and I look at how many students are able to graduate with an associate degree, it's phenomenal. And even if they don't matriculate into a degree, an associate degree, the credits that they have are going with them. That's huge. And you can put a dollar amount on that. So the savings is there. When I look at when I came to this district, we were capped. There was a lower number. I'm not passing judgment on previous superintendents before me, but it's really hard to tell a student and their parents that, sorry, I know your kid wants to be in industrial electrical or they want to be in plumbing or whatnot, but we hit our limit. And so we're only sending 100 kids, even though we're in the largest district, we were sending the least amount. How do you do that if that's their pathway? And now 10 years, I've had students come back and they're very successful. They've got great jobs. They went the city route, BOCES route, and they were successful. So we have multiple pathways. We have a premier career center where students can go in the field. And I've had parents say, you know what, my kid wanted to be a nurse. They don't like the sight of blood. You just saved us a ton of money. And job shadowing and vice versa, stories like that. So what we have, I believe, is a tremendous investment. We just are working with City PR to be able to get something on an easy-to-read sheet to be able to say, wow, these are how many kids participate in athletics. These are how many kids participate in fine arts. This is what we did in this room. We did a whole study, maybe about 5 years ago on the impact that sports and extracurriculars have with their academics and with their behavioral referrals and attendance. And I think we need to get back to that to show the people where their taxes are going, because we're always afraid to put it out at a certain number, and we know we're hamstringing us, especially with a 2%. If this would be different, if we were one of those districts that was getting an 11% increase, we wouldn't have to do that.
And obviously, we talked about, we were looking at the trending there the last time. I was like 5 would be great, 7 would be perfect. So obviously 2 is not, 2 is too low. I think Tom and I have kind of talked a little bit, but we'll have to all get together and make some plans. But I'm hoping, and we're thinking that the goal is going to be we want to maintain what we have, because we've done a lot the last 3 years because of the COVID money. So if we can at least hang on to all of that, we'll throw some fund balance at it and some different pieces of money and see if going forward, the state does more for us, given what they're doing.
And there's always going to be things that pop up. For instance, and I'm going to get a little bit more detail when I talk about and I don't know anybody who would be against this, but the school health-based center. So myself and Maureen and Paul Brissett went to Mexico, and we saw they have two. And the one we saw was split between their elementary and their high school, and it's phenomenal. And if a family doesn't even have insurance, it doesn't matter. So you had kids coming in, getting their teeth cleaned. You had them getting their sealants for the dental hygienist part of it. But then they had the general practitioner, or the nurse practitioner that was there. You have the doctors that come in to see these kids, and it's never a cost to the parents. So they have their insurance, they get billed. If it goes beyond, there's no co-pays, there's no whatever. If a family doesn't have insurance, there's no cost to them. However, there is the only cost to the district is the build out. Now, Paul Brissett is a phenomenal contractor and thinks when we were there he could do the bulk of this all himself, but there's still going to be a little bit of cost to be able to build that out the way that the state requires Connects Care. That's what I'm talking about, to be able to do it. But then that's going to be phenomenal. But then there's a couple other things we got to work out because we're so spread out. So would we be able to kind of do like a shuttle system? Some of the districts that are spread out like us, they have the parents have to pick their kids up. But this is something, as our enrollment grows, we're looking at what can we provide to our community, but our community has to partner with us and say, look, we got some skin in the game too. That would be a huge benefit to us, that if a bus were to be able to pick our kid up at A.A. Cole and bring them there for whatever their appointment is, and then bring them back to the building, then the parents aren't disrupted, which essentially is money that they're saving by not having to take work off and whatnot. So these are the things that we're going to put out together, but that's why when she builds a budget, there has to be room, especially to accommodate all of those unfunded mandates that the state rolls out. Thanks, Maureen.
Maureen, just a quick question. So Tom referenced the spectrum of percentages that's across the state. How does that get determined? Do you have a sense as why we are 2% as opposed to 11?
Because they're running the foundation aid formula, and we do not have more students. And our factors that are in there, which are poverty, and I'm trying to think right now, they talked about it. They changed a couple of the factors, is basically the formula is not driving us an increase in aid. So we're basically on the 2% is just the guarantee. It's like a hold harmless.
It's safe harbor. Up to this point, Christy, they looked at us like we were still 5,500 strong. Now they're looking at 3,500, but they're not understanding the fact that if you look at our special ed numbers and the budget we have for that, now with 3,500 compared to when we were 5,500, we're spending more on special ed than we did then.
And they talked about going to the governor, your advocacy, school boards, NISCUS, ASBO, to basically ask her if she would put change some more of the features. Remember, there was a whole Rockefeller study. So they've taken a couple of the little things to put in there.
Yeah, it doesn't
Some of
seem like they took much of the big things.
No, not at all. But then again, remember, like, the poverty piece doesn't necessarily always help us, because we're not as poor as some of the poor ones. And the same with the population, but all schools are losing, basically declining enrollment. The sparsity, I think, was in there, which we do have sparsity in a lot of our areas, considering our square mileage. There's a bunch of different factors, and they'll slowly, hopefully, get it to be a little more current. Yep.
Thanks, Maureen. All right, moving on to item E, personnel. Can I get a motion for item E? Allison, motion, second. Casey, a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Randy, did you vote? Okay, perfect. All right. And it passes. Moving on. Item F, the consent agenda. Can I get a motion for item F in its entirety? Lori, in second? Second. Randy? Okay, any discussion on the consent agenda? All those in favor? All righty. And now moving on to item G, we'll start with Mateo.
Thank you. Just a reminder, and for anyone interested, the high school's musical production of Hadestown is taking place this week. Show dates are the 6th, 7th, and 8th. Times and how to purchase tickets can be found on Paul V. Moore's theater Instagram page. The high school's DECA Club recently put on a fundraiser concert at the Brewerton Center for the Arts. Senior Sydney Saunders opened the show, followed by the band Lazy Bones, made up of seniors Jonah Martinez, William Card, Andrew Card, and Alex Papaleo. Together, they were able to raise over $1,000 for the club. Several students have been selected for the 2025 Scholastic Art Awards. These awards consist of the best paintings, drawings, and photos from Syracuse area students. This year, 7 students were awarded honorable mention, including Maya Howard, Olivia Arney, Delana Humphrey, Casimir Smolnik, Madison Stevens, Raven Wheeler, Charles Van Slyke, and Liliana Yeckley. 3 students were awarded Silver Keys, including, again, Liliana Yeckley, Alia Pei, and Kaylin Caton-Bourne. And lastly, 2 students were awarded Gold Keys, including Leah Burnham and Emma Rubar. Congratulations to them all on their accomplishments. For more information, you can visit syracuse.com, where they recently posted an article. And I printed out some of the artwork of the students, so y'all can take a look if you want to. Congratulations to senior Jackson Perkins, who recently broke 100 wins in his wrestling career here at Paul V. Moore. And lastly, we are also having a very successful indoor track season. Junior Cadence Williams has set a new school record for the 1,500 meter with a time of 4 minutes and 56 seconds. Senior Abby Tetralt has set a new school record for the weight throw with a distance of 41.11 feet. Junior Paige Ryder has set a new school record for the high jump with a height of 5'3". And finally, the girls 4x200 team, made up of seniors Hannah Reichard and Rachel Ganser, and juniors Grace Watzkeritz and Hayden Krasafi have set a new school record with a time of 1 minute and 51 seconds. And that's all from me.
It's great. Thank you, Mateo. Does anyone else have any reports, anything to report?
So I'm pretty excited to announce that our boys varsity wrestling coaches have kind of all came together collectively and formed a youth wrestling team that they're kind of running to help build relationships with the kids when they're really young. So that way, by the time they've gotten up to, modified JV or varsity, they've already built those really nice foundations with the coaches. They've got a good foundation of wrestling, and it's completely at no cost to anybody in the community. So I'm pretty excited to let you guys know that.
Great. Anybody else? Okay, moving on to the superintendent report.
So with your approval of next year's calendar, we can get that out, because I've had parents wanting to book things for next year. So that means it's an early spring break. So spring break it starts March 30th next school year. Also, it's going to be the Christmas season, holiday season is going to be again 2 weeks. The way that it fell onto the calendar, parents were excited when I told them that. Couple high school parents, not the elementary. They're ready to get them back. So that's that. We'll get that out there to the staff, and they'll be happy that that's been approved. I want to thank Mateo. He took half of it off my list again, which is great. So congratulations to Eli Connor Jr. at PV Moore High School, who earned a seat based on his NYSSMA audition to represent Central Square and the New York State in the All-Eastern United States Mixed Chorus. They will perform at Hartford, Connecticut. There's approximately 200 students from the eastern U.S. states that were selected to participate. Eli is one of 7 students from the entire state of New York who have been selected to perform a tenor 2 voice part. In the history of Central Square School District, there have only been 3 or 4 students to achieve this honor. Again, it goes back to what we talked about, having a premier fine arts program. Central Square alum, this is cool. So alum Austin Melvin, his mom works in our special education office, who is on the track and field team at Roberts Wesleyan University, competed in the pole vault at Brockport Rustbuster, and not only broke the school record that was set in 2006, but also hit the NCAA Division II provisional standard with a jump of 5 7.06 meters, which is 16 feet, 7.25 inches in pole vault that will help him during his chase for a spot on the NCAA 2 National Championships in March. Congratulations to Austin. It's amazing. It is. Junior high school, all-state honor band, Vernon Verona Sherrill High School. Congratulations to the following students for earning a seat in this year's NYSBA Zone 4 Junior High All-State Honors Band. Ninth graders, Keegan Allen, Colton Allen, Olivia Everson, Daniel Flynn, Mason Hunter, and Emerson Wolfenden. Eighth graders, Alex Fenton and Indigo Wheeler. The Central Square High School winter drumline's first competition was at East Ridge High School, New York. Congratulations on an excellent performance. Central Square placed fourth, scoring above New Hartford, Cicero North Syracuse, Liverpool, Corning, Painted Post, and Greece High Schools in competition. Winter Guard program is off to a great start with their recent home show. This weekend, February 8th, the Guard will be competing at ESM High School. Again, I just briefly touched upon the school-based health care, which connects care. I'm going to put something out to parents because I've got a lot, over the past couple of years, actually over the past 6 or 7 years, we had parents asking about it. And there was a little bit of confusion because 3 times I tried and we were denied. But it wasn't through Connects Care, it was through Oswego Health. And the reason for that was the proximity to their urgent care right in the village. Because essentially, they've got to staff these buildings, right? So it comes as a cost. Connects Care is totally different, and it's for any student that is in the district, whether the parent has insurance or doesn't have insurance. Parents will never be billed beyond what their insurance can pay for. It's mental health services, it's oral hygiene, cleaning, sealants, and then just general, practitioner stuff. So it's been really great. We got to go, as I said, Maureen, myself, and Paul Brissett. Paul played a key role because he would build out the scope of what it has to look like, and he said, yeah, this is totally doable. The difficult but the good part is it takes 18 months for Connects Care Board to approve, for the state to approve, the feds to approve, and then for our board to approve. However, in the meantime, they could get up and running with the dental hygiene. So there could be a time where these chairs are amazing, and it's actually the water it's all a unit part of the chair for cleanings and whatnot. And we could say, okay, for this week it'll be at AA Call, and for this week it'll be at Brewerton, and this week it'll be at Millard Hawk and Hastings Mallory, and then at the middle school. So it's a great opportunity for parents that are very busy, or some parents that think that, well, they don't have insurance for their regular teeth cleanings. This will be a game changer for our community. When we were there, Maureen and I and Paul witnessed little elementary kids coming in for their annual wellness check. They had to get on the scale, and we're just watching the kids happy as can be. But it's also great because for the state-required vaccinations. So the worst thing for me as a superintendent is to comply with New York State's rules that say, okay, they have that 1 week grace period, then they can't be here anymore. And so you want to really throw a kid off, especially a senior, to do that. And the parent's like, Tom, I've made appointments. It's 2 months from now. All of that's taken care of immediately. So the benefits are phenomenal. And the only startup cost is to build out, the rooms to meet the specifications that are required by law for New York State. So we're really excited about this. I want to get something out to parents to say we've started the process, and it's really exciting. It's a really great thing for our community. The other thing is this is the first week in February every year is National School Counselors Week, so I blasted something out, thanking, and it listed our counselors. That's all that I got.
Yes.
Thank you.
And importantly, for National Counselors Weekend, I assume that you say that, but on behalf of the board, make sure you pass our thanks along and appreciation.
Absolutely.
Moving on to item H. Can I get a motion for item H in its entirety? Ellison, second. Casey? All right, any discussion? All those in favor? All right. Okay. Yes, hold on. Going back, H3. No, so there was a Title IX policy that was in there before alongside the cell phone, digital policy. It was,
Yes,
so Yeah.
what's this one here?
yeah, I asked Pearl about that.
Oh,
Right,
correct. So let me go
So-
back to that when I
yeah.
put on a weekly memo.
yeah,
So that was the student gender identity, where we had said that parents have to always be told if their child is going to transition. It was a clerical mistake, and it was an easy mistake for a clerical to be able to make, because the policy had changed. It was updated 2 weeks after that, and they pulled the wrong one. So we spoke with Bethany Centrone, and it was just best to be able to say, no, because something on topics such as this, we wanted to definitely do it the right way. That's what that was for.
Was H1 or H3?
That topic was,
H3.
H3.
So that was a clerical error. Are you confused about the email that we got?
34.
Oh, okay. Okay, because we removed one of them,
That's
one of the
34
policies.
point- Yes, that was
Yeah,
the first one. that was
Yeah,
pulled.
okay.
And the athletic one is going back for a
Right, I thought that was
Yeah, no,
agree with you.
yeah, no. Nope. All set? So, just because you did it during voting, so all those in favor? Once more?
Is everybody in favor?
Okay. All good? All right. And so now I will make a motion that the Central School District Board of Education hereby move into executive session to discuss matters leading to the tenure of one particular person and the purpose of seeking legal advice from the board's attorney with no action to follow. Can I get a second? Allison? All right. Yep. All those in favor? Okay.